I would like to call up Margaret and Mark. If you could unmute and turn on your cameras, that'd be great. There we go. Perfect. Hi both, how are you both?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. Let me just give a little bit of an intro. So I'd like to introduce Margaret, who's the Executive Director at Unpack Recycling Label. She mentioned earlier that you may be familiar with the work that she does. If you look on the back of any of your supermarket shopping, it will tell you whether it's recyclable or not, and it's her and her team's responsibility for that. And I'd like to introduce Mark, who's the founder of the Do Lectures and delivers social innovation consultancy to really big global companies. So thank you for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. I think to start, could we just have a quick overview of what you do and the businesses you work with, and then we'll jump into a couple of questions if that's okay.
Yeah, do you want to go first, Margaret?
You go first, Mark.
Okay, so first, a tiny correction, really tiny. I'm not the founder of the Do Lectures. I'm one of the founding partners. The two founders are not me, and they're amazing, and it's a great project, but I just help, right? I'm not the brains behind the whole thing, but thank you for that. So I'm 52. I've been working in sustainability since I was 20. I did an environmental science degree in Bradford. I'm from Leicester. Played for Leicester Tigers youth team, ran with the county athletics team, all that sort of stuff. So big hearts to Leicester. But I'm a kind of environmental designer, really. So I've designed everything from streets. So I designed the traffic calming across North London to products. So washing machines, tumble dryers, computers, clothing, through to packaging. Actually, Margaret did a lot of work on packaging, and there's no such thing as a bad material. There are just weak systems. And so I've done a lot of work with wrap over the years, EnviroWise when it existed. I work with people like Ginsters on their packaging, which is really interesting. The pasties are fine. I wouldn't really touch the sausage rolls. And I've done a lot of work in, I guess you'd call it kind of articulation and brand. So helping companies explain what their environmental strategy is. That's the sustainability side. The other side of what I do is just out and out innovation, working with companies to develop new products. Look, if you can change someone's mind, I was very lucky. I spent 6 years working in Bradford and Leeds with very small manufacturing companies, predominantly textiles and printing and packaging. And if you can change someone's mind in those sectors about sustainability in the mid-90s, which wasn't easy, then frankly, you can change their mind about anything. So I actually realized that my skills of workshop running and developing new ideas. I run a company called Ape, not a big sales pitch. We're in Ashby-de-la-Zouch, and we help big companies think small and small companies think big. And we do all of that in and around sustainability.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Margaret, I think you're on mute.
I was just checking that Mark had actually finished, trying not to interrupt, because I'm terrible for interrupting. So I was trying to be polite. That's why. Get used to eventually. So I'm Margaret. I run OPRL. It's a very interesting time at the moment. We've just had some consultations coming out around producer responsibility, etc. Their suggestions for labelling are one of my colleagues who does not work for OPRL, but something else, referred to them as scandalous, because from a behaviour change thing, they just will not deliver. But we have well over 600 members. Our membership growth has grown by over 20% in the last year, which, considering Brexit, COVID, everything else, is pretty amazing. And we have everything from the one-man band, as it were, right through to your absolutely huge Nestle's, Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, Aldi, Lidl, blah, 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 blah. So we talk to them a lot. Prior to that, I worked at a university being a professor of waste management, been involved in waste management for well over 30 years now, and used to work a lot on electronic waste. So I've delivered a lot of training in developing countries to people. And one of the things I'm probably most proud of was when I was doing some training in Nigeria, And afterwards, one of the big electronic companies went in and said to the biggest market in Africa, where do you burn your e-waste? And they said, we don't. And they said, oh, come on. He said, no, we used to, but we had training on it and we realised we were killing ourselves and nobody had ever told us this before. So we stopped and now we do things differently. So I was really pleased with that. I spend most of my time now arguing that packaging isn't evil and that plastic isn't evil, and talking to all sorts of different people about how we can drive things forward in packaging, increase recycling, increase innovation. So we're all very happy to say, oh, let's all go packaging free. But if you look at packaging, it's only roughly 3% of the carbon footprint of the food sector. So we need to be very careful that actually food waste is the biggest thing. I'm sure you've all heard if food waste was a country, it would be the third biggest contributor to climate change in the world. So all these people are being very careful about removing all their packaging, but at the same time making sure that they're not really that worried about their food waste. So we're trying to drive circular economy thinking as well. So within the next month, we will be launching our first refill label, and hopefully you'll start to see that on shelves. One of my colleagues said, oh, refill, that's really straightforward, isn't it? Nothing is straightforward.
Thank you. That was a really good insight into what you both do. In terms of the first kind of question, I'm going to go big here and I'm going to ask, is sustainability good business? And what are your thoughts on sustainability within business?
Definitely. I mean, if I just quickly, because Mark will be able to do this a lot more intelligent than me, so I want to go before he gets to say it. It definitely is. What we've seen now is a massive rise in, OPRL published their progress against SDGs. Obviously, that's just one aspect of sustainability, but it's really important. We're looking very much at evidence-based targets around that. You'll see that there's a big rise in that ethical and sustainability business. I can't remember quite how many, Mark might even know this, how many B Corp companies there were 5 years ago compared to now. It seems like every other week someone's declaring they're a B Corp, which is absolutely brilliant. So I think it is, and I think it's likely to change. But I would say there is a gap between what we are told by customers and consumers that they want and what they actually deliver. So, I mean, if you go down the street and ask people if they recycle, most of them will say they do. Well, that's not reflected in the recycling rates, is it? How many people say they fly tip? Well, none, but there's over 1 million fly tip incidents and you can add it all on. So we know what we should be doing, but it's not necessarily what we actually do. But I think it's definitely the way forward.
I think it's the only business, right? Economy and ecology both share the word eco, which comes from the Greek word oikos, which means home. So both economy and ecology are all about keeping your house in order. And I've literally just written these words. For a long time, my work involved people saying to me, can you make us look less bad? And then it was, can you make us look good? And then it was, can you make us be less bad? And now it's, can you make us good? Actually, it's now, can you make us regenerative? And when you look at regenerative businesses, when you look at businesses that embrace sustainability and place it at the heart of their innovation process rather than at the end of their marketing process, they're more profitable, they attract and retain the greatest talent in the world, and people love them more, because the way that we sell ourselves, those 3 marketing revolutions that we've seen over the last 50 years, the end of lying, the end of hiding, and the end of control, they really matter, because we can see everything now. If I want to find out how green a company is, I can Google it. Someone will have done an undercover video somewhere. I can find out. And I would add to that the end of romancing, which I'll talk about maybe later. And I've been working, oh God, we started a circular economy program with the RSA called The Great Recovery, a friend of mine, Sophie Thomas, and I, about 10 years ago, where we placed design and economy at the center of circular economy. We often use the word circular. It's actually the economy, stupid, that works, right? And so most of my work there has been refashioning business models. So working with RS Components, who are the world's largest supplier of electronic components, redesigning a lighting system for them, LED lighting system. LEDs, we think they don't get hot, they really do. One of the key things you can do with an LED cluster is take the heat out the back of it faster, so you build better heat sinks in. By doing so, we managed to extend the life from 10 years, which is pretty good, to 20 years. Now that's really interesting. Who wants to spend 400 quid on a 20-year lasting light? So if you flip it and you begin to lease that light, then your sales will increase, your income will increase. But RS Components aren't very good at doing that kind of thing. So they didn't want to lease, but they did want to do a buyback. So you pay 400, but in 10 years, I'll give you 200 for it. Well, that's really interesting because your CapEx equations change massively. And we launched that model and we saw, and hold your halt, we saw 8,000% increase in sales. 8,000, and the product was great, right? And we redesigned the product and that's beautiful, but the business model change was where the magic happened. And yes, they made more money, and yes, they had monthly contact, and yes, they could sell other things. We did the same thing for Samsung and washing machines, looking at leasing washing machines, and we did the same thing back, oh, this was a long time ago, this was 99. I was working with Electrolux on leasing washing machines, and we saw, I mean, I know loads about washing machines, way more than I should, and we did some work back then where by leasing washing machines over a 4 life cycle, so one family had it for 3 years, another one had it for 3 years, and you tiered it down, so it ended up going into social housing. Great washing machines, still working really well. They made double the money that they would have made from selling 4 separate machines. So the models really work. The risk that we have in this world, the risk that we have is that we produce beautiful, sustainable products that not everyone can afford, and it becomes this middle class concern, and that is a real risk. And I've done some work on this. So I work with a couple of denim manufacturers at the moment, incredible one in London, really interesting work that they're doing. And the jeans that they sell are they're like £200 a pair of jeans, right? Which is crazy money, but they're guaranteed for life. So that's a really interesting model, but only the rich can afford that. So I began to look at this in more detail. I began to look at cheap jeans like Levi 501s, perfectly good, reasonable pair of jeans, and you can grubble around on the internet and you'll get a pair for 50 quid, like a new pair. But maybe you haven't got 50 quid. So then you'll go to Klarna, or you'll go to a shop like Bright House, or you'll go to Grattan's even, the club books, as my nan used to call them. It's not a club, nan, they want your money, right? And you buy them from there, but they're not 50 quid there. They're £99 for the same pair of jeans. They're double. The poor pay more for the same things. And if you haven't got 50, you haven't got 99. So you tick the box that says pay weekly. And you can spell weekly in 2 ways, right? And the interest rate on that over 4 years, the interest rate is 29.9% on a normal kind of Grattan's or Littlewoods purchase. So over 4 years, you've paid as much for your cheap jeans as I've paid for my made for life expensive deep jeans. So what we need is a revolution in business models that allows everyone to be able to pay in a different way. Only then will we see the democratization of great eco design and great products. And I'll pick up something Margaret said, which I really agree with. This whole idea of demonizing materials is really interesting and really unhelpful. And I spent years reducing packaging, and I now spend my time defending packaging because it does a really good thing. And you can be dragged down the wrong route here really easily. And I've just done a series of little videos that are on Instagram and LinkedIn trying to bust some of these myths. So you'll have all come across a certain brand of toilet roll that's wrapped in paper, and then it delivers in bulk in cardboard box to your door. And it's not, the advert normally involves people being frustrated by juggling toilet rolls. Not that anyone has ever done that down the supermarket aisle, right? So I began to look at this because we're a customer, right? So I'm looking at these toilet rolls, and I'm wondering what the environmental impact of the packaging is. The toilet rolls are great, right? So I took the paper off and I weighed it and I calculated the carbon footprint, and then I times that and I looked at that for normal plastic wrapped toilet rolls, and I thought, yeah, but those other toilet rolls, the new ones, there's a lot of sheets on there. Yeah, there are, but they're shorter. And I get really detailed here, so forgive me. A normal toilet roll sheet is 12.5 centimeters long, and one of those toilet roll sheets is 10 centimeters. So I thought, well, I have to normalize for the different densities here. So what I'll do is I'll work out the carbon footprint per wipe. I know. So I worked out how many sheets I use per wipe of both toilet rolls. I use 3 of a normal toilet roll, and I use 4 of one of these bulk delivered toilet rolls. And then I did the calculations on carbon and packaging, and I did it per wipe. And here's the figures, right? Here's the figures for the bulk delivered paper wrapped. Paper's better, right? It comes out, including transit. Transit's tiny, even though it's shipped from China, but it is on a boat, right? But it is shipped from China. The carbon footprint is 0.07 grams of carbon per wipe for a bulk delivered paper wrapped toilet roll. For a standard recycled toilet roll wrapped in polyethylene in a 9-pack, comes from Europe, the impact is 0.38. It's about half. It's about half. And it depends what problem. So my plea here is not move back to using plastic wrapped toilet rolls. My plea here is, what problem are we trying to solve? Are we trying to solve ocean health, or are we trying to solve carbon footprint? Because they have very different answers. And the 3 biggest challenges to the oceans are, number 1, climate change by miles. It's a scale out, right? So bear that in mind. Number 2, overfishing. If you really give a hoot about fish, please stop eating them, right? It's as simple as that. Number 3, ocean debris. And hidden within ocean debris is plastic. It really matters because it's really visible and it's horrible. But be clear what problem you really want to solve. And there's another little example here. I did the TV show with Hugh Fearnley-Whittinstall on coffee cups. You know, where Hugh's sat in the cafe and where someone's with him pulling apart the paper on a coffee cup. And that was me, right, when Hugh's going, so that's not recyclable. I said, no, but that bit is. So that was me. And we had that conversation. And at the end of it, it's a lovely bit of film. And at the end of it, I said to Hugh, do you know what the carbon footprint of the cup is? And he said, no. I said, it's about 32 grams of carbon. He said, oh, is that big? And I said, well, do you know what the carbon footprint of a latte is? And he said, no. And I said, it's 340 grams of carbon. So if you leave 10% of your latte, you might as well have used another cup from a carbon footprint point of view. And that, reaching back to the previous conversation, I didn't realize I was popping straight onto the stage to feel a bit embarrassed about that. That's to do with the dairy. That's all to do with the dairy. So be really clear what problem you're solving. And if you place sustainability at the heart of the innovation process, if it's sustainability costing you money, you're doing it wrong. If it's not making you money, you're doing it wrong. This isn't about profiteering. This is about better business.
But just to add to that, Mark, don't you think that, I mean, there's a bit of an issue. You talked about the move to paper, and we've got a lot of producers, you know, big brands saying, oh, we're going to go to paper, or we're going to do everything in metal, or we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And it's not because that's the best material. And I think, you know, all of the material groups have a role to play. It's because they're trying to avoid plastic. And don't you think there's a role to be said for actually communicating and making, rather than just producer responsibility, making consumers understand their role? Because we talk about litter, and I find the whole argument about, you know, the biggest litterers are McDonald's or Coca-Cola or Walkers, you know, PepsiCo, really rather tedious, because they don't, you know, and actually they invest quite a lot in not doing that, you know. And anyone I know who's ever worked for McDonald's has spent a lot of time in their job cleaning up around that McDonald's. I live 6 miles away from the nearest McDonald's, and we get rubbish here. McDonald's, I can guarantee you, do not do that. But yet somehow we've got this culture where we say it's all the producers. And I'm not saying they don't have a role, but actually we should be looking now at value chains and the roles of all of us. And when we're looking at circular solutions, you cannot do them in isolation. So one of the troubles we've had with our refill label is actually, so you've got something designed for refill, if you buy lots of them, that's really bad idea. So, you know, we've got all these great things. We've reduced single-use carrier bags by whatever percent, and isn't this brilliant? So the average householder has 54 bags for life now. Well, that's great. So you're buying something which is incredibly more material and resource efficient. I mean, I remember when I worked at the university, I'd just come off doing a load of back-to-back BBC interviews on carrier bags. So plastic carrier bags were invented by someone who wanted to save trees. Plastic, you know, plastic itself was prevented to try and save the elephants and the whales. So, you know, it's that unintended consequence thing. So I came back from doing all this stuff about the key thing, whatever your bag is, you need to use it loads. It's not environmentally friendly because it's cotton. I mean, the carbon footprint of cotton is scary before you even start looking at the water footprint. And I came back into the university, and I kid you not, they were having an event and every chair had a nice canvas bag. And when I spoke to marketing about it, they went, oh, but they're environmentally friendly. I said, no, they're not. Giving them nothing would have been environmentally friendly. And they said, oh, but we can't do that. And I said, well, yes, you can. And actually, maybe what you could have done is said, do you know what? We're not going to give you a canvas bag, unlike some of our competitors, because we don't think you're probably going to use it the 700 times you need to have the same carbon impact as a single-use carrier bag. But we don't, because it's a bit too hard, so we don't bother.
I agree. These little videos that I'm doing, this is what they're all about. They're trying to bust these myths. And that one on toilet roll is a really classic example, right? You think you're doing the right thing with the paper wrap, you're not. And you can buy bulk unwrapped, different company, but you can buy them. And I did the same thing with plastic bottles versus glass bottles. And you're absolutely right, Margaret. The plastic doesn't put itself in the river. People put plastic in the river, or people or systems. And one of the key problems is 90% of ocean plastic comes from 10 rivers, none of which are in Europe. But I'm not saying that isn't European waste. It gets shipped to the Far East and then ends up in the wrong place. So it's the systems that are faulty rather than the material. However, there are some things that we could do with moving away from. There are some single-use plastics that are crazy. We're absolutely bonkers. Wrapping peppers in plastic makes no benefit. Wrapping cucumbers in plastic makes loads of benefit. So we need to use this magic ingredient that we've got called science and be led by that rather than by the heart. And we kind of forget that, but having some kind of user responsibility as well as producer responsibility. I was involved in really mid-90s, 94, 95, in the producer responsibility regulations for packaging waste and the essential requirements in the conversations with I think it was still called DEFRA, it might have been DOE back then, to understand how they would work. And everything we wanted to do has not been done, right? So it's literally the opposite of what we wanted to do. However, there is something in place. There's a financial mechanism, and it is making an impact, not as great as it should, but trying to understand, trying to explain to consumers that this is not an on cost and it's not a PR exercise. That's the key thing. And you know, it's really easy to make a demon out of some of these materials and to say, well, we're against that. Yeah, you're against that, but look at all the bad you do over here. And it's having that balanced view. And that's the position I come from. What's your biggest impact? Let's start on that. The totemic stuff, great, we'll come to it. Let's deal with the elephant in the room first.
Amazing insights. I'm shocked at the examples you've given and the comparisons. They're incredible. We are running very short on time and the chat is going wild, but the one question I'd like to ask now is, as a small business owner or as an individual, what is the one thing that you would suggest is the best thing to do in terms of educating your consumers and educating your customers about sustainability?
So as a small business owner, the first thing I'd do is I'd have a look at where my impact sits. I'd look at the largest impact that you have, and you can go as wide as you want with that. It doesn't matter as long as you're really clear what you have and what you haven't looked at. We've just done this for a massive company in Bradford, actually, and their biggest impact is in shipping stuff around the world. That's clearly their biggest impact. So don't focus on the wrap that sends the packaging to the product to the door. Focus on the density and the weight of the materials that you ship around the world. So understand your largest impact, and then develop a strategy to reduce that. Then create a little ideas competition. It's crazy, silly things that you can do to encourage people to think differently within the business. And once you've done that, that's the internal stuff. The external stuff, the consumer side. Explain to consumers what you do. Consumers aren't daft; they're hungry. Like the new consumer cares.
Some are daft.
Some are daft. Okay, well, that's fair enough. But in my humble opinion, if you treat them with respect, then they will listen and they will understand, and we can help people. And sure, we've all had those really frustrated. I had one the other day, not the other day, the other month. In fact, thinking about it, it would have been the other year, wouldn't it? With a couple who turned up at the launch of an event and were bemoaning plastic because they jumped out of their four-wheel drive in Mayfair. And I'm thinking, I said, "Do you think plastic's bad? Let me tell you about SUVs. You think plastic's bad? Let me tell you about diamonds." Because we kind of get stuck on the wrong thing. So it's about communication, and it's about understanding your impact.
I agree. I mean, it was interesting that Waitrose had a bit of an issue with their Botley store with Unpacked, that people were driving from all over the country in their big 4x4s to demonstrate, really virtue signalling. I think things as a small business owner, it's be brave and be imaginative. I mean, this is where a lot of our innovation comes from anyway, is from small business owners. So don't try and see how you can do what other people do differently. Try to see how you can do differently to start with. And also, don't be afraid to ask for help. I'm not saying this to just plug Leicester, but I think businesses really don't understand the level of support, particularly small businesses, that are available for them. I used to absolutely love doing knowledge transfer partnerships. Apart from the fact I made some great friends with the associates I had, but there's some great support things out there. There's a whole world of students who are desperate for projects, and the students are often very engaged in this space, so they can look at things totally differently. And also, if you've got a relatively straightforward question, if you just ring up someone at a university and ask them, the chances are they might just tell you. And so, and help you with other resources. And really, so there's a lot of support out there. There's a lot of expertise out there. And there's a lot of people who, in this sustainability field, believe in it so passionately that as long as they can, put food on the table, vegan food on the table, that actually, and locally sourced, just to add that, it's not really going to help if you're buying your avocados from, Kenya, but as long as you can do that, the most important thing to them is to make that change. And small businesses are a great way of them delivering that change.
Thank you. Both amazing insights, and I couldn't agree with you more. Myself, this is the good way to kind of big up what we do at the Innovation Hub. If you send myself or any of my team members an email, we'd be happy to help. We've got the university's expertise at our at our fingertips, and we'd be happy to help anyone who needs it and who wants to put sustainability at the heart of their business. So we are really short on time, and I'm going to have to move into the next section with the next speakers. If anyone's got any questions for Margaret and Mark, then please pop them in the chat, and I'm sure they can have a little chat with you there. Or there's a discussion later at 12:30, which we'll move into to continue this conversation. The chat has gone wild, so I don't know if you've seen it, Mark and Margaret, but I'm just
opening it up now.
Might take you a few minutes to get through it.
I'll have a little scroll through while I'm off camera.
Perfect. Thank you so much, both of you. Really, really appreciate it.